And also joining us is political commentator Dick Morris, also a former advisor to President Bill Clinton while he was in the White House. And Dick, at this point, it almost feels silly asking this question, but will we see Hillary Clinton in 2016?
Well, there's a test you can take to determine that clearly. Put your finger on her wrist, and if there's a pulse, she's running.
Yeah, exactly. And we saw that very, contrived appearance there at the Tom Harkin steak fry earlier this week. We're going to also bring in.
She's playing.
Go ahead.
The only
Dick.
reason she's playing cute is that she, if the minute she says she's a candidate, she has to take positions on a whole host of issues, and she'd like to delay that as long as possible.
And certainly, of course, with that Benghazi hearing getting started, the Special Select Committee on Benghazi getting started today, we're going to bring in J.D. Hayworth, who's also up in Washington, D.C., where that committee is just getting started here. And J.D. has some questions for you as well, Dick.
Thanks, John.
Thanks very much, John. Francesca, Dick, it's good to have you along from Philadelphia. And just to show the popularity of Dick Morris, not only do people watch you here on Newsmax TV and listen to you on radio in Philadelphia, but your latest column is featured prominently on the pages of The Hill, one of the newspapers here on Capitol Hill. They have headlined it Clinton's Dilemma. And you write, Dick Morris, that Hillary could have a Hubert problem. Explain that if you would, sir.
It seems to me that the situation Hillary's in now is very reflective or reminiscent of the situation Hubert Humphrey was in 1968. And it's instructive to think about that. In 1968, Humphrey was the vice president under Johnson with a very unpopular war going on in Vietnam. And Humphrey, on the one hand, wanted to distance himself from the war and from Johnson, but on the other hand, he needed Johnson's support, Johnson's party faithful, Johnson's party machine, Johnson's money machine, and Johnson's endorsement to be able to run. So he had to balance the two all the time. And he had a reputation for being hawkish, and he had to overcome that to appeal to the Democratic Party that was very much in favor of peace for the most part. Their voters were. Hillary is in a similar situation. She's responsible for Obama's foreign policy. Hasn't been the vice president, but worse, she's been the Secretary of State for 4 years. So she created almost every problem, or is involved in the early stages of almost every problem the president has to face. But Hillary has a reputation going back to the beginning of her political career as a hawk. When she first took office in New York State, a state she'd never lived in, 9/11 happened. And she had to show she was tough on terror because of that. And she voted for the use of force in Iraq, spoke for it, stayed with the war, supporting it until 06 or 07, and voted for the Patriot Act and against any attempts to weaken it. So the left wing of the Democratic Party suspects Hillary. They don't believe that she's necessarily one of them, and that's why they turned on her to nominate Obama in 08. So now Hillary's got a problem. Does she put distance between herself and Obama's war policy, even though she in the past has supported it, and even though she's in the past been a hawk? And if she doesn't put distance between them, she's inviting a primary on the left from the peace movement. And at the very least, the peace movement's sitting on its hands. Richard Nixon was elected president in '68 because the peace Democrats didn't come out to vote for him because he'd been a long-term advocate of the war. Could history be repeating itself? Hillary's dilemma.
Well, that dilemma is there. It is true, Dick, but there is another. The reports now that a select group of her advisors basically screened Benghazi information before that Accountability Review Board took a look at it internally at the State Department. Now, is that still waiting, the whole Benghazi issue? Will it blow up on former Senator, former Secretary of State, former First Lady Hillary Clinton?
Yeah, she hasn't hit that bump in the road yet, really. She's currently suffering damage only of her own making during her book interviews and her book tour about being so impoverished. But she's about to hit big time the Benghazi problem. First of all, you have the hearings. You have the report that there was a document dump going on before the hearings in the basement of the State Department, overseen by her chief counsel and Cheryl Mills. And then, in addition, you have the televised testimony, not testimony, but appearances of the 3 Benghazi guards on Bret Baier's interview, where they say clearly that the commander told them to stand down, stay put, and not go to the aid of the consulate. And when they finally got there, not disobeying orders, and went there, it was half an hour after the raid started and the ambassador was dead. And then the issue of whether there was air support, why there wasn't. And then the core question, which is why did she spend 2 weeks lying to the American people, telling them this was about a video that everybody now dismisses as just ridiculous?
Well, that situation exists, and as was mentioned earlier, the start of the Benghazi hearings in the House today. Now, there is a pattern to oversight that you don't go with the sexiest questions first. Today's hearing has to do with the standard operating procedure, if you will, of embassy and consulate protection. In building a constitutional oversight case, Dick, do House Republicans run the risk of delaying getting to the really important stuff to build this kind of oversight record?
No, I mean, I don't know what Gowdy's schedule is in terms of hearings. I don't know what he's going to do before the election. It's kind of skewed to the midterm elections, and I think he might not want to be mixed up in them. So I think it's fine to take this deliberative pace. Gowdy's got to establish his credibility, his committee's credibility, and simply to have a one-off witch hunt day won't work. The other thing is that the hearings ultimately are going to be involving one person, Hillary Clinton. And before you call her as a witness, you've got to prep the ground by getting all sorts of basic information on the record, like what is standard procedure.
Let me interrupt for a second, Dick. I have lost my signal to you. Let me ask John Bogman and Francesca Page to step back in with this interview. And, Dick, please continue with your remarks.
All right, JD, we'll take it from here.
Go
ahead, Dick.
I was saying that the committee needs to lay the basis for what is the standard procedure in diplomatic protocol and all kinds of basic elements, so that when Hillary testifies, there's a body of evidence to hold her to the truth.
And Dick, as we look at this, one of the criticisms that's been laid out for Trey Gowdy, who's the chairman of this committee, of course, he is a former prosecutor, but he's maybe taking too much of a prosecutorial stance in his role here. Can he still do what you said just needs to be done, build that foundation of evidence here without coming across as overzealous?
Yeah, I think he can. I think the very nature of Hillary's fabrication in saying that this was the tape is so outrageous that I don't think anything would be seen as overzealous. Let's remember about Trey Gowdy. He may end up benefiting from this politically, but he's not running for president, and he can be a true prosecutor, trying to find the witness or the defendant guilty without worrying too much about his personal image.
And aside from Hillary Clinton, who do you think will be will provide the most insight on what actually took place on this day, considering that we've already had hearings in the House Oversight Committee and elsewhere?
Well, Susan Rice has got to explain how she got those talking points. And the White House counsel, I'm forgetting his name, the National Security Advisor who wrote the talking points for her. I don't mean the official talking points. I mean the email that he sent her that arrived the day
I think that was
before
Ben
her
Rhodes, if
testimony.
I'm correct.
Ben Rhodes, yeah. He's going to have a key role to play in it. And you don't know if the president is going to try to keep those people away from testifying, citing executive privilege. He might do that.
Yes, and we've also seen that as well with some of the IRS proceedings that have taken place as well. The executive privilege question remains out there.
I was also saying, don't forget the IRS proceedings. There's a district court judge with the power to lock people up, demanding the truth, demanding documents. That's the scandal that probably will have the biggest legs.
All right, we'll look forward to that. Dick Morris, thank you so much for joining us live from Philadelphia today, and had J.D. Hayworth with us on this interview as well, having a little trouble with that. Of course, that happens when you're dealing with live television. We'll check back in with J.D., who's live for us in Washington, D.C. once we get that connection reestablished. And of course, much more to come here. John Bachman, Francesca Page with you here in J.D.'s place while he covers the 20th anniversary of the contract with America from Washington, D.C. More to come here on America's Forum. We'll be right back after this.